All right. Hello. It says we're
Hello.
live. We're going to trust it. It's been a while. Hello to everyone out there in YouTube and Facebook land. I am Sheila Williams of Sheila Williams Coaching, and I have with me today Danay Novoa of Danay Novoa Intuitive. And every once in a while, we decide to hop on social media platforms of our choosing and talk about, basically ramble about next to nothing. And yet people find value. And that is heartwarming for us.
We're brilliant.
So,
Of course they find value.
well, see, it's perfect. So, if this is your first time joining us, feel free to say hi in a comment or wherever you have an access to say hi. If people put in questions, we often answer them, and it sounds really intelligent when we do. So, that is the fun part about the fact of Danay and I are both intuitive coaches, and we sometimes have some really great gold nuggets of wisdom to share. And the rest of the time, it just sounds like we're bickering. So there's value in that, I think. So today, how much fun. We are going to talk about the power of words. And this has been in our repertoire of, hey, shouldn't we do that soon, pretty soon? We never have. And so I think today is the day. And we are talking about not just the word choices themselves, but how much vibration is often carried within those word choices. And how, as mindset coaches, sometimes that is the best suggestion we can even make, is to suggest an awareness of the words that are being chosen and the vibration behind it. And I don't want to pull out all the examples right away because I want Danay to get a chance to talk, because she always offers me so many good, juicy examples that she does all of the explaining for me. So, hey to Julie and Danielle, and I'm so glad that you are on board and here for as long as you want to be here. Feel free to put any questions in the chat and anything else that floats your boat. So, Danay,
This
how
is
are
an
you
interesting
today?
experience. Me, I'm great. Technology seems to be playing nicely with us, and people who have been watching us for a while know that this started because we wanted to try things out, like a YouTube Live, and then we started playing with StreamYard. And I'm noticing on my end that I don't see anything. I only see me and Sheila. I don't know who's on the call. I don't know what they're saying. So this is very interesting for me.
That's
Um,
fun.
so yeah, I feel kind of out of the loop, which is great. Um, so okay, what are my thoughts about the power of words? I notice that I am more mindful about the way I speak, more methodical in the language I use. I take the perspective that your words are your wand. Um, However, with all that said, I still have some habits about um, seeing. Um, oh, I figured out what the issue was. We're good. um,
Perfect.
I have some habits of using words that I've kind of clung to, and then I hold them, and then they become habitual. And then I don't know that I'm saying them because they're habitual. So when that happens, I realize that I am having an experience that it's almost like autopilot. It's almost like I just go about my day saying whatever comes to mind, even though I'm trying to be methodical. And it's like these words, these set words, have slipped underneath the radar until I have wonderful individuals like you go, do you really do this? Is that really the word you want to use? And then I sit there and I go, what are you talking about?
Well, it's important because you sometimes you don't hear yourself saying it, because as you say, this is how we talk, and this is how I talk about this particular subject, and this is how it feels. And I do believe it matters. I really think it makes a noticeable difference.
It does. It does in a sense, but I think because we get attached to the words we use, it's almost like, coming from an experience where many of us have been in sort of the victim mentality and not necessarily having anything of transgression happened, but more like, why is life happening to me, as opposed to how is this benefiting me? You get this experience where you say these words because they highlight your story well and they demonstrate your story well. And this is something that I've had happen, where I talk about, things that have happened to me in the past. And then I say, I've really battled with this before. Like, I've really struggled with this, or this has been a challenge of mine. And you kind of use those words as storytelling to say, like, this is going to demonstrate or depict what I'm going through for someone else to understand. And I think that's the most important thing, is the words we use are to help people understand us better. But then the frequency or the vibrational or the energy that's behind it can carry so much more power, that each time you say these words, when you tell these stories, that charge is still there and you may not even notice.
Well, I think you bring up a great point when you introduce the idea that it's meant for others to understand, that maybe you're trying to create a bond with them or give them a sense of your history and how far you've come and everything that you've struggled with in the past, and look at you now, or maybe a joint bond of, oh, we both struggle with this. And there could be value in that. I'm not saying there isn't. And yet I am suggesting that it might feel better to release that, because are you struggling right now in this moment, or are you remembering something that felt uncomfortable in the past? And you might very well be struggling with something in the moment, but does it feel good to think I'm struggling with this? Or could it be reframed as, I have a lot of choices in front of me right now. I'm not sure which one feels better. And I know that I'm in the process of figuring that out.
Yeah. And the word choice becomes, for lack of a better word, sometimes a challenge because of the monitoring of the South. I'm trying to think of different words, and I knew this was going to happen. We talked about the words.
I'm not going to jump on you for every word. And I think that that's a great illustration of sometimes you do speak with people and you're like, oh, I don't know what words to use because I know they're going to jump all over me. Like, you're not allowed to say that. You're not allowed to say this. And I don't agree with that, because I've been in that situation where you're literally combing your brain for, how can I say this that isn't going to get just some rebuttal back?
Yeah.
Because that's not fun.
No.
I think where I do it is simply, maybe not always, but it is always in my intention to simply create an awareness of, are you aware that these are the words you're using? And I'm not feeling that your vibration matches those words. Like, oh, I'm, I gotta call the internet company and I gotta change my plan. And that's always like this big battle, or it's always this. And then you start, really, is it? Or was it maybe one time not a great experience? And yet here you are about to create a whole new experience, and giving yourself the option to have that choice be a pleasant one, an enjoyable one that you're going to tell all your friends about, of like, you will never believe the best experience I just had calling the internet company, as opposed to setting the stage of, ugh, well, that's always a headache. That's always a battle. So it's one example that some people have experienced in the past, like going to the DMV. That's it. Like, everybody knows about the terrible experience you're going to have when you go to the registry office. Except, do you? Because it's possible that it could be great.
I'm getting a flashback to the very first video that we did, about talking about fear and going outside your comfort zone, and talking about taking people's word for the truth in their experience, which we tend to do. We're more likely to buy a product that somebody we know recommends, or somebody that we know has experience with it, because we trust them. We trust that. But I remember on that conversation, you and I talking about my experience kayaking, and how I just took somebody else's word for it, saying that I'm not going to be able to do it. And then I created this story that I continued to to say to people is like, I don't kayak because I don't want to tip over, and I'm happy just being in a canoe. So I created this, with my words, I created this story that created this fairly minor fear, just more of a nuisance. But it was this idea that this story kept feeding the energy of whatever expectation I had about this. And that's the thing, that when we tell stories about our past, the words we use energetically charge it every single time. It's like plugging it into the wall and saying, here, have some more of that energy of the thing that you don't want to relive. So you hear often, stop telling the story if it's something that doesn't feel good. And it's because the words carry the charge associated with it. So,
yeah, which again, it doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. And I still do think it's helpful if you have someone who can show you the perspective of, ooh, here's that thing popping up again. Is that really how you feel? Is that what you mean? And to allow yourself the opportunity to be open to feeling something different. Like there might be something you might have a fear of the dentist. And every time the idea of going to a dental appointment, that might feel big and scary. And you might associate it with trauma or pain or whatever it might be. And maybe that is something that feels real and current to you. And yet how much fun to be open to, well, maybe this time it'll be different. Maybe I'll have new expectations. Maybe the dentist will be different. Maybe the techniques will be different. Maybe there'll be nothing that needs to be done. And I'll get my lollipop in the treasure box at the end. And then it'll have been a completely transformative experience for me. So I think it is simply that being aware. And not to get too far away, I think, from the power of words, but it's really listening to that vibration. Like whenever Danay would say, oh, I battled with this, you could feel everything in her body was invested in it being a battle. And yet it didn't really match her current situation, in my opinion, right? It was just more like, I'm just bringing along this story about how that used to be hard. Are you battling with it right now? Well, no. Okay. So go ahead if you want, pick on some of my words. I know I do them too. You're just really easy to pull out examples for.
And I'm totally fine with this. Like we've had a number of conversations behind the scenes, I guess, or in private. And it's just like, we've been talking about this live for a while. And I know I'm an excellent example of this because I'm very careful about my word usage, but at the same time, I also find words that are very dramatic to use because I'm a storyteller. And it's not necessarily like, here's my life and like feel bad for me. Mind you, there was a time in my life where I had thought about like, how can I have people understand me better and really demonstrate the struggle that I've been experiencing. And that shifted a lot. So now when I try to tell a story, I make sure that it's not charged, but I'll still use words. And I love, as much as it like can frustrate me in the moment, I love that I have you in my life to do that, to highlight to me as a mirror and say, do you really battle? And I'm like, son of a bitch. Like, did I say that really? But I got used to it. They're all habitual words. I use words like plummet and battle and struggle and challenge and all these things because I got used to using them. They were my descriptor words to say, here's the experience I'm going through. And now, I'm thinking about the live that we did about anxiety. And the word shift, the power of words in that one was, I no longer call it my anxiety because it's not mine. It's an energetic experience that I label as anxiety. They use the word anxiety. I don't call it mind. I call it the anxiety or that anxiety that I experience, because that's what it is. It's an experience. But the other thing that's come to mind more recently about it and how I've evolved since that conversation, and a lot of it is based on your input in the conversations that we've had, is that I look at the anxiety, and you keep saying, is it really anxiety when you're experiencing it? Sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't, but it's always good to ask, because it's my initial response when I get this feeling to say, oh, that's anxiety. And then it empowers it, because of all the experiences that I've had where I have felt anxiety or panic, it's like they all gather to that one moment and say, this is what you're experiencing now. And that's heavy. So I've recently had a friend send me something that, along with what you've been saying this whole time, of it just being energy moving through your body, and then like feeling excited is just like feeling anxious, or feeling angry is just like feeling anxious. Like these, they all have similar charges to them. It's just, how do our thoughts, like what sort of thoughts do we then have to formulate this label that says this is the experience? And in this clip, it talked about, you know, the anxiety essentially being your power center activating. And to me, I heard that, and I've heard it before. There was just some sort of timing that it landed really, really well. And I said to myself, every time I've gotten that experience of anxiety, I say, oh, that's just my power. That's just the energy moving through me. And then it calms right down. I've changed the word. It's still the same experience, but I've changed the word that describes it and says, this is just an experience of energy moving through me. Do I have anything of immediate concern right now? No. So my body is just doing something based on whatever thought I had or whatever experience I was having. So that's a huge evolution on my end. Do I still have moments where I feel anxiety? Yes. But I'm not quick to jump and label it as anxiety until I've gone through a process of trying to figure out what may be the cause, or what do I want to label it as? What else could it be? So it's an interesting experience.
I'm really glad that you shared that, because a lot of people have watched that video about anxiety. And I know I was trying to be very careful about my word choices in that video, because you have personal experience with it. I've maybe touched on it lightly, like some people do, like maybe a bit of overwhelm sometimes, but a little bit of nervousness, but it is not the same. And I absolutely agree that it's not the same, because people who do have this anxiety, it often seems to come out of nowhere. It's like, but I was just fine, or I was just shopping, or I was just driving, and poof, it feels like something big is happening, and you need to be in like protective action, vigilant mode, right? And so I love that you've offered that update with a reframe of always acknowledging and respecting, okay, I'm feeling something, and I'd like to understand what this is. I don't have to assume that it's that old feeling and those old words or those old understandings. I'm actually different right now, so this might be different. And I get to allow that it is, and to go through a bit of a checklist. Like I know anyone who's had children, you get the crying, and you do mentally, you go through, okay, how's the diaper? Are they hungry? Are they thirsty? Do they need a nap? Like crying is crying, but you also have a framework that you can go through so that you can best soothe whatever that feeling is. And so I think it's really important. And I know that some people just say, oh, well, and excitement and fear kind of feel the same, so just say I'm excited. That might help. Or it could feel like you're sticking a Band-Aid over it, and you do feel as if you're not acknowledging how you're feeling. And that is never healthy. I don't think, and this is one that we have talked about, is sometimes like, well, I'm working through my emotions, and I need to feel them really fully and feel really bad so I can work through them. I will call you out on that sometimes, because like, really, how's that working out for you? do you feel better? Or, could you have given maybe your inner child who was crying, like, here's a granola bar, here's a juice box. Like, you do that with children because it works, because like, let's refocus on something that feels better. And then that other might just dissipate. And so we do have differing opinions. I do think, yes, acknowledge, yes, do what feels better. And sometimes that is what feels better. But you always assume that you've got to I got to feel this really big to honor the fact that I'm feeling it. Sometimes I think maybe not helpful, but maybe helpful. And isn't it nice that everybody gets to choose for themselves? So without allowing you to rebut that, I'd love to.
Allow me. I am going to, and then we'll get to Julie's thing too. Yeah. And I have other things I want to say, but this is hilarious because I agree. Acknowledging it, totally on board. I know I can get dramatic in trying to feel through it, but like we'll use this anxiety. This is just power moving through me, sort of thing. In that sort of instance, I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying that there's something happening, and that's acknowledging it. And then in that sort of circumstance, I'm not plowing through it, but I'm also not resisting it. And I think that's the important idea of allowing emotions to move through you. You don't have to power through them, but you also don't need to resist them, is what it comes down to. So I agree that trying to, I don't know how it said that we both said that. Oh, that's why, because you typed, I got it. You have a lot of power.
Release the resistance, yes.
Because it'll come up as me too. Anyway, having that acknowledgement of something, it makes it more manageable to say that I'm acknowledging it, but I'm also not saying go away or stay. I'm just saying you're there, do what you're going to do. And then if I find a need to distract myself, I distract myself. But I agree, not putting a Band-Aid on it is ideal. So we can go back to Julie's question.
All right. I think Julie had to pop off, but I'm sure she'll watch the replay. So can you speak about our words over text or email and the difference that makes as opposed to talking in person? And I think this is a great question, Julie, because so much of our communication these days is in this written form, text, any kind of messaging, emails, and in some ways we speak very little or not very often to people in person. So because even to differentiate live and in person versus online over a video call, there is still so much body language that is not translated. Everything is shifting with regards to our communication these days. So Danay, do you want to maybe offer something about just the power of words as we are, say, just texting or emailing?
Well, this is where I think the visual aspect comes into play, because I know that if I'm writing something and we're having a conversation and I'm writing a reply, or to anyone really, then I think, can there be some sort of indicator, word or emoji that would say, I'm receiving this well? Meaning my words may be interpreted in, like a typical thing is, I got to run, do this thing. And then I can reply, oh yeah, that's fine, we'll chat later. But you don't hear the, oh yeah, that's fine, we'll chat later. You may hear it as, oh yeah, we'll chat later. But you can't tell. So you can be like, oh yeah, we'll chat later, smiley face, or, oh yeah, we'll chat later, exclamation mark, saying, I know you're good. It's my turn. So these are things that are helpful. And my goal when I'm speaking is to make sure that somebody isn't misunderstanding me. And sometimes I'll leave stuff out because I don't want to have the person think that I'm being emphatic about something, or maybe I'm in a bad mood and I'm like, you don't get an exclamation mark or an emoji. Who knows? Go ahead with your little hand
Okay.
up.
I did put my little hand up because I wanted to share how I think we have learned to rely on emojis and things like that little exclamation mark that's meant to be sound like, oh, we're cheerful, we're light, we're happy, whether we are or we aren't. So it is so interesting. And I actually put myself on an emoji, I called it an emoji cleanse a few years ago, where I actually stopped using emojis completely. And I tried to make sure people were aware that I was doing that purposely, because without the emojis, all of the text messages sounded very kind of abrupt and severe and serious and angry almost, which I think is fascinating because the words were exactly the same. They just didn't have a little winky face or smiley face at the end of it. So we really have adjusted our interpretation so fully when it comes to these written forms of communication. So
Yeah.
I think for my own response for Julie is, I think that our words are important. And I think it's very important that you understand your vibration behind them
Yeah.
as you communicate, to be as succinct as possible. I think sometimes when you try to over explain, things can be lost in translation. I don't actually agree with Danay, though, that, she said she has to make sure that she's not misunderstood. And I do think that we are taking on a lot of responsibility these days, that we
Yeah.
want to make sure that everybody understands us. And it feels like it can be a bit more give and take. And so as a culture, though, we do have to adopt giving that benefit of the doubt. Picking up the phone or speaking with actual like voice message can sometimes offer more clarity over texting. And so the word choices, I think, are important, but I would put even more emphasis on clarity of messaging and making sure that you're not owning that everybody, thinks your winky face was the appropriate one, because maybe that little laughy face would have been better. Like we got to let go of all that judgment and needing to put that in. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, it's true. And you're right about the taking responsibility. I want to be mindful of time, and I know we want to answer the questions. There is a topic that I do want to bring up because I think it's important to bring up, but I don't know, based on timing, if we should wait and just answer a few more questions. What are you feeling?
I would love for us to answer the questions and then let's assess.
Okay. All right.
So I wanted to address, Danielle has said in the chat, she's referenced a couple of times about the tonality. So your actual tone. And there's no question that that is also important. When I think of the words that, for instance, we used about battle and struggle, to me, there's the vibration of your actual experience coming through with those words.
Yeah.
Another aspect is, for instance, tone of voice, because I'm going home said in certain tones of voice can mean very different things, like, hey, I'm going home versus I'm going home, like, and everything in between. So tone is so important. And Danielle also brought up the example of, reading to a baby. It doesn't matter necessarily the content, but a loving tone of voice or a soft, soothing tone of voice, it brings through that message of love and soothing. So how much fun is it, again, to know we can choose as we're communicating what and how we want to communicate.
And that brings up the discussion that I had yesterday with the group about saying the words "I love you." People love those 3 words. It's very important to hear it, but how it's said carries much more meaning than it being said, because you can say "I love you" and mean it with the love behind it, but you can also say "I love you," like and that carries a different meaning, right? And it's true. The words themselves have in some ways, no power. It's the energy that the words carry that have the power. And it's whatever you assign the words to have, because there are certain words that people will not use because it carries a charge for them, and other people will use them because it doesn't carry that charge for them. So there isn't really a set of words that somebody shouldn't be using, as an example, as should, but and it's the energy behind it. So does this word carry, like, profanity, swearing? Some people, that's just like saying and, is, the, and other people, it's the heaviest or more charged sort of set of words. So, like, the words themselves don't matter. It's what energy package are you attaching to the words, I think is important.
I love that you brought up profanity, because every culture actually has different words that have the same type of energy behind it. So one language may use certain words and another language would use other words, but they have the same meaning behind them in terms of the energy of the profanity. And I remember when I was learning French, they were talking about, oh, it's all, the words are related to the church because of the Catholic Church background in Quebec. So I'm Canadian, and that's what it was talking about. And that was my first understanding that, oh, so if I say that, to me, that doesn't have anything, but that could be the most offensive thing in the world if I were just walking down the street and someone heard me say that, because of the connotation. And so it's absolutely interesting to me, because as you say, it's the vibration and the meaning behind it. So
I totally get an image of these envelopes packed with energy attached to these words as they float along the sky or the air to somebody and saying, like, hi, I think you're great, as opposed to, hey, I think you're great.
Well, even you use the word, just to backtrack, with the phrase "I love you." So often it's "I love you, but," like oh, like, I love you, but. So it's like, is that the same as a nice heartfelt "I love you"? Or it is always interesting how being mindful is obviously the best. So just to go to Anne's question, I think this is a great one. What do you think about being self-deprecating to be funny or make a connection with someone? It's a habit that can feel unloving to myself. So, Danay, do you want to address this? Because this is so common.
Good, yeah. So this is a big one. And it's big because I spent years doing it. It is the best thing, and I don't do it anymore. But while I was teaching, I would use self-deprecating humor because I wanted to be funny, but I didn't want to pick on anybody in the class. So I would pick on myself. That energetic package is being repeatedly sent to me. And I'll still every once in a while say a joke, and just, it's just like on a riff, like it'll just come out and then I'll be like, well, right, that's language and energetics that I'm sending back to me. So now I'm more mindful of the humor that I use and have it being kind to me as much as possible. So now I just make fun of Sheila. No.
So much easier.
No, I don't do that.
But you could. And so, Anne, thank you for bringing this up, because it's, again, I think it's your point of it making a connection with people. We're assuming that it will be a common thread. And how wonderful when we can get to that place that we don't feel we need to bring ourselves down in any way in order to connect with someone, that we can bring ourselves up and assume that they will meet us there, because that will be the common ground. I was in a client session with someone this week, and the person, she was just talking along, my client, to a friend in another situation, and the person interrupted and said, "Are you always this happy?" And my client immediately kind of backtracked and went, "Oh, no, you should see me at home, or you should see me," and blah, blah, blah. Because she felt as if it would almost be inappropriate to say, actually, yeah, I'm pretty happy person, because she thought, oh, that's going to make it feel like I'm separate from this person. And I want us to have common ground. And she was assuming that other person, wasn't happy all the time. And that's why she brought it up. And I thought, isn't that funny that even that was her first instinct? Because I immediately thought, I wonder if this person would love to know how it is that you're feeling so good, because she would like to feel even better. And so it became an interesting awareness for my client afterwards of going, maybe next time I could say something like this that feels like a more of a middle ground. So
yeah, but you bring up an interesting thing with that, because we're talking about the power of words under the assumption that these are words that we're speaking, but we also think them.
True.
And thinking about that, I think, carries the same amount of energy as speaking it. So, and I don't want to say this in a capacity where people are like, well, holy crap, like, how am I supposed to monitor my thoughts and my words? But it has nothing to do with the words. It's the energy. Yeah. Can you monitor and be more mindful of the energy and how you're saying things? So I think that's valuable.
Yeah. There's no question that that's one of the first areas, if we are willing to create more awareness so that we can feel better, is how are we speaking to ourselves? In that self-talk that never seems to end, are we being very critical and judgmental? And often people will say things to themselves about themselves, in their mind that they would never say to someone else because it's so hurtful. And yet it's a habit and a pattern. And the more we are aware of that, just think, whoa, wait a second. Well, that doesn't feel good. And to get yourself to that point of knowing that if it doesn't feel good, it's not actually true. Yeah. It's just not true. It doesn't feel good because it's not true, is how I choose to feel as often as I can remember. So just to follow up with Julie here says, great. I'm a self-proclaimed queen of emojis in my text messages. And she added like a whole bunch. So I love that.
It really is. It's great. Yeah, I think it's valuable to pay attention to the energetics and the self-talk. I mean, who do we spend the most amount of time with is ourselves. Yeah. So how do we talk to ourselves is, I think, an important thing. So I think that's valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. This, I think, is great. Yeah. Danielle says, Danay, yesterday you said something to the effect of every thought is a prayer.
Yeah. So I was talking about the energetics of what we share, which is very synchronistic of today's conversation, because yesterday's conversation that I had with a group of people who are taking a course with me was pretty much this conversation. It's about a completely different topic, but the idea is, what energy are you pulsing out when you speak, you think, you feel, you just are? And as I was thinking about the sort of evolution of this process and becoming more mindful, I realized that essentially when we pray, if you are the type to pray, you're sending out a bunch of energy to say, like, please help me, or I really have this gratitude for this, or whatever it may be. And then you're thinking all the time. And I was like, you're pulsing out energy every time you think. So I was like, I've heard people refer to every thought as a prayer. And it's just the idea that every single aspect of expression that we have, we're sending out something. And if you're somebody who happens to believe in prayer, then you could think that every thought you have, every feeling you have, every action you take is like a prayer being sent out, a message being sent out, because we're day to day, we're engaging in messaging to people that we talk to every day, to ourselves, and to our environment. When you walk into a room, if it feels like a loving room or it feels very heavy. So, and I made the comment that you walk into a room with students who are about to take an exam and you feel the difference, and none of them have to say a thing. So yeah, this is one of the ways to be mindful of the energy you're in, because it would be really challenging to pay attention to every thought and every word you speak. But if you pay attention to the intentionality, I think that's valuable. I am aware of time, but I do want to add this other thing in, because I think it's a rounding out, because noticing when we talk about the power of words, we're always talking about the power of words in a way of what are we saying that is heavier in nature, that carries like the battle, the struggle, the hardship. But there's the other side to the coin to this. Words have power to inspire people. And Sheila and I are in a field where the work we do, our hope, our goal, our passion is to inspire people. And we do that with the power of our words. We do that with the energy that we attach to the words. In the sessions we have, in the group calls that we have, we endeavor to inspire people, and that energy you can feel, to tell people that they're doing great and in their life, that they're handling an experience very well. That's the power of words. Yes, we have the other side with the power of words being, we can have moments of self-deprecation, or we can have moments where we're reliving past stories, but we can also have moments where we're empowering ourselves and we're empowering other people. So I wanted to bring that forward because I didn't want this conversation to end only highlighting the stuff that we struggle and battle with, but what are we doing well? And how are we making a difference in our lives and other people's lives by being that expression of love, that expression of kindness, that expression of inspiration for other people? So I wanted to share that and then hear your thoughts on that as well, Sheila.
Well, I think that's perfect because it is always good to highlight, the wanted, the desired, as opposed to focusing all the time on the other end of the stick there. And so to feel for yourself with that self-love and appreciating yourself, and then moving that out, appreciating things around you, and all the focuses of your attention that bring good feelings, and how important to know that that vibration behind the love and appreciation can be offered and understood very simply and very easily. And again, the words might not even matter, but the intention and the vibration behind them,
always do.
It carries everything.
Yeah. That's why the words don't matter. Like, you could be saying all sorts of things and it could carry the loveliest energy, and that's what's felt. So
yeah, that's great. Great place to bring us to a close. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, I am going to share Danielle's comment here. So yes, both of you have not only inspired me, but shifted energy and lifted me out of the goo with your words. Hallelujah.
Awesome.
Love it. Always happy to have conversations with you, Danielle, and share that love. And Anna always says, this is a wonderful conversation. I love every word you girls have spoken. So yes, thank you, Anna, for being here. Love it. All right. Anything to bring us out, Danay?
I think you're great. And I appreciate the ways that you inspire me and help me shift into being a more positive person.
Nice. Well, thank you. I appreciate you. You give me many opportunities to be aware of what I do for myself that maybe doesn't serve me. And it's wonderful to have an extension of myself, a mirror. People like different words there. But yeah, it's fun. It's fun to play with someone who can go, and then you can go, and you go, oh yeah, we do that. That's kind of funny. And maybe we would feel better if we have a different focus. And so isn't that the most fun in the world?
I think it's lovely that we make each other better.
All right. Well, thank you to anyone and everyone who was here for us for the whole thing, or part of it, or watched on the replay. We do this for us because it's so much fun, but your comments and questions and energy just make it even better. So thanks to all. And yes, who knows what the next conversation may be.
but it will
Always a
be
mystery.
sharing well-intentioned words.
Oh, it'll be a mystery broadcast coming
Yeah.
soon at some point. So have a wonderful day. Bye.